Hello again everyone, welcome back to ptet.chemistry channel. So far that was it for covalent molecules, but now we are dealing with a new term, relative formula mass. It's still called MR. Relative formula mass can be given in questions and they ask you calculate the relative formula mass and you don't know what you're doing, but what they want is MR. So it's the exact same strategy. This is ionic compound, so naturally we know the formula is MgO because we know Mg2 plus from the group 2 metal, they will lose 2 electrons to achieve a fully filled outer shell. From a group 6 non-metal, it will gain 2 electrons to get or achieve a fully filled outer shell. These were part of your atomic structure as well as part of your ionic bonding topic when you drew the dot and cross. So now I'm moving on to the crisscross formula where we talk about the valency based on the charges of the ions, and of course we do the crisscross of the valency. We label this as valency, okay, based on the charges, the correct charges. So 2 on the right goes to the left, 2 on the left goes to the right, but these are not the simplest whole number. I can divide by 2 both sides because this is mathematics. So 2 over 2 give you 1, 2 over 2 give you 1. So what you have is Mg2 plus and O2 minus. The charges cancel each other out. You just get MgO. You should know how to draw the dot and cross because they were part of your ionic bonding, work 2 and work 3. Work 1 and work 2 of your ionic bonding a couple of months ago. So it's worth it that you recap these because all of these concepts will be tested in your end of year, will be tested next year, will be tested again when you reach your final exams, close towards the end of your O Level. This question is not asking you on dot and cross or all of these. This is just a recap of the concept you have done leading up to this point. This is just MR. So there's 1 Mg. And from the formula, there's also 1 time oxygen. So the MR of MgO. If you look from the periodic table, Mg is 24 and 12, and oxygen is 8 and 16. So we know the AR is the number at the bottom because the periodic table tells us that the number at the bottom is relative atomic mass. Relative formula mass, just like relative molecular mass, is going to be the sum of the individual relative atomic masses. Sum means you total up, you plus them together. So that is going to be 1 magnesium times the mass of 1 magnesium, which is 24. I have to add them up together. Never ever multiply. Do not multiply. You multiply the number of atoms by the mass. But then, for the individual atoms, you're going to total up the mass of magnesium and the mass of the oxygen, depending on how many you have. So I'm going to have to plus, or I have to sum. I have 1 oxygen, so each oxygen is 16. Press it on the calculator and you get 40. Moving on to the next bit, so I have PBS. So if you look for lead, it is in group 4. So you should know your periodic table is in group 4. So there is 82 and 207. So we are looking at this 207. Sulfur is in group 6. So there's 16 and 32. We are looking at that AR. And we're looking at that AR. So there is 1 lead and 1 sulfur. Hope you can see there is 1 time lead and there is 1 time sulfur. So there's 1 times 207 plus 1 times 32. You're gonna have to add them up together. Do not ever multiply. So I've seen some students make that careless mistake and they end up with ridiculous numbers. So you need to know that you add up the mass for the individual atoms. Next up, we have sodium chloride. So we have 1 sodium and 1 chlorine. Straight from your periodic table, I hope you notice that sodium is element number 11. Element number 11 means the atomic number or the proton number is 11. So you don't read 11, you use 23 because the number at the bottom is the relative atomic mass. Now chlorine, so let me just show you perhaps better if I just show you using a different color. Let's use blue. Okay, I forgot to show the sodium just now. So 11 and 23. So you have your periodic table, yeah? So 17 and 35.5. So what happened is these are the AR and this is the AR for chlorine. So I have 1 chlorine, so 1 times 35.5. Press that into your calculator, 23 times 1 plus 35.5 times 1, I get 58.5. You should probably write that a bit better because handwriting is important. Now magnesium chloride, so obviously you have Mg2 plus and Cl minus. How in the world do they get MgCl2? You look at the charge, that is the valency. You look at the charge of chloride because the group 7 will gain 1 electron to go to a fully filled outer shell. Gaining electrons, non-metals gain electrons, give you negative charge. Gain 1 electrons, give you -1 charge. The valency is 1. When we crisscross, the 1 goes to the left, the 2 goes there. This means there's 1 Mg2 plus and there's 2 Cl minus, hence the formula is MgCl2. Once you get to the correct formula, we need to know how to count the atoms. This means there's 1 Mg and 2 Cl. There's 1 Mg and 2 Cl. I mean, everything makes sense here. Now, do you know how to work out the MR? So there is 1 magnesium. Each magnesium has a mass of 24. There is 2 chlorine. Each chlorine has a mass of 35.5. I've shown you chlorine here. You should be able to refer to a periodic table and be able to do this on your own. Okay, so this 35.5 times 2 plus 24 times 1, or the other way around, they'll give me 95. Moving on to the next one. So the MR of AgNO3. Silver in the periodic table has a symbol of Ag. It is element number 47. So Ag is 47 in the periodic table. It's got a relative atomic mass of 108. Nitrogen is 7 and 14. And then oxygen is 8 and 16. We are looking at relative atomic masses for the individual atoms. We have 1 silver, so 1 times 108. We have 1 nitrogen, so 1 times 14. And we have 3 oxygen, so 3 times 16. Again, this is getting a little bit more complicated, but it is nothing more than just pressing your calculator to see whether you can or cannot press your calculator. Unfortunately, there are some people who cannot even use calculator for whatever reason. I have no idea. Okay, so just 2 further examples to go. This is 2 times NH4 plus and 1 time SO4 2-. I hope you remember how to get the formula. NH4 plus SO4 2-, 1 and 2. These are all part of work 1 as well as work 2. There was the reason why we have to do those concepts before we come up to this thing, which otherwise wouldn't make sense to you. Where does it come from? It comes from these ions, formula of which are not given in exam. You have to know them, then you know the valency, then you know the crisscross, then you know how to get these. And you also know how to count the atoms. This thing in the bracket means 2 lots of that, and therefore there's 2 of that and 1 of that. So that means altogether what I have is I have 2 times nitrogen, I have 8 times hydrogen, 1 times sulfur, 4 times oxygen. Hope you can count all of that because you have 2 times nitrogen, or you can imagine 1 plus 1 is 2 times nitrogen, 4 hydrogen and 4 hydrogen, so 8 hydrogen. Looking at these, there's 4 hydrogen in here, but there is 2 of them, so there's 8 hydrogen altogether. That's why it's in the bracket. There is 1 sulfur and there's 4 oxygen. So calculating the MR without me writing the formula will be 2 times 14 for the 2 nitrogens, plus 8 times 1 for the 8 hydrogens, plus 1 times 32 for the 1 sulfur. All of these are relative atomic masses obtained from the periodic table, which you should have in front of you. And I have 4 times 16 because I have 4 oxygen. Each oxygen has a mass of 16. So the calculations are getting more and more complicated, but it just depends on, do you know how to press your calculator and do you know how to read the information. Last but not least is this aluminium sulfate, so Al3 plus SO4 2-. As part of work 2, you already counted the atoms, but make sure you know how to count it yourself. So this means there's 2 times aluminium. This is inside a bracket, there's 3 of that, so there is 3 times sulfur, and there is 4 times 3, which is 12 times oxygen from that thing on the right hand side. Hope you can see that. 3 times sulfur, 4 times 3, which is 12 times oxygen. If you really cannot see that, you should know where it comes from. Well, you can write it out, Al3 plus, because there's 2 of it. SO4 2-, there's 3 of them. Well, I hope now you can see what is going on. There is 2 aluminium, and there is 3 sulfur, and there is 4 times 3, which is 4 plus 4 plus 4. 4 times 3 give you 12 oxygen. So what is the MR of that? So 2 times aluminium. Where is aluminium in the periodic table? Aluminium is 13 and 27. So we are looking at AR of 27 for aluminium. So 2 times 27 plus 3 times 32, because sulfur is element number 16. So if you look at 16, not the way around, 16 and 32. So there is the AR for sulfur, because this is the proton number or the atomic number for sulfur. There are 3 sulfur from this formula, each of which has a mass of 32. And last but not least, I have 12 oxygen, so 12 times 16. If you look back, you have 8 and 16. So that is the relative atomic mass of oxygen from the periodic table. Oops, I ran out of space there. Anyway, doesn't matter. So just press that last bit onto your calculator. 2 times 27 for the 2 aluminium, plus, because you are adding up, you are summing up, 3 times 32 for the sulfur, 3 sulfur, plus there are 12 oxygen, 12 times 16. I get 342 as my relative formula mass. They call it relative formula mass because relative formula mass is simply what they use to name the MR for ionic compounds. Whether it's relative formula mass or whether it's relative molecular mass, the strategy is the same. Sum up relative atomic mass. Count the atoms correctly. Make sure you know how to get formulas, or make sure you know how to read, and also make sure you know how to read the information within the formula in terms of the brackets, the number at the bottoms, count atoms correctly. That was part of work 2. And of course, just doing this, writing out your working as well as showing your working, and then press your calculator, you should be able to get MR. Okay, this should lead nicely to our next bit of calculations topic, well, subtopic, and I'll cover that in the next tutorial. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to click the button on the bottom right to subscribe to the channel and share the channel widely with other people you know who might benefit from these tutorials on the channel. Okay, see you in the next tutorial video. Thank you for watching.